Okay. Didn't make the sound, so I don't know if it's recording, but we're going to put faith in the blinking dot. Today we are reading His Reasons. It's a Todoroki X Raider fanfic by AshleyH713. I'm going to try and get through chapters 7 and 8 of Season 2. Let's begin. Season 2, Chapter 7. Because of Amari's newfound realization, she found it hard to focus during the second event, her mind still clouded with the terrible truth. Because of that, she barely scraped by in the cavalry battle, making it to the next round. What the hell was wrong with her? She needed to straighten up, and quickly. Katsuki seemed to know this also, and stomped up to her in anger. She clearly wasn't trying her best in the last round. Hey, brat! What is wrong with you? I told you not to embarrass me, didn't I? She looked over to the crowds at these words, putting her head down in shame. He was right. She was being disgraceful. I know. I'm sorry, Katsuki. He took in her sullen expression and a wave of dread overtook him. This terrible USJ memory flashed back, and Katsuki was afraid that she pushed herself again. Ah, hell. Wait. You aren't sick, are you? Amari turning to her brother, turning her brow in confusion, only to have him grab her roughly, already trying to push her off the field. You are withdrawing, now. Her eyes widened at this, knowing he clearly wasn't understanding. Wait, hold on, I'm fine. Stop overreacting. It isn't about that. Bakugo stopped then, still unsure about her words. She wasn't lying to him, just to keep going, right? That sounded like something he would do. But Amari made his decision for him, wiggling out of her brother's grip and turning back towards her classmates. Before she left, though, Bakugo could hear her voice echo through him, determined but sad. I'm sorry, I'll try harder. Todoroki watched her movements from afar and couldn't help but feel partly responsible for her poor performance. She must have really been affected by his past, and it was somehow getting to her. He knew he had to apologize to her the next time they spoke. The third round started, and everyone was surprised to learn that the last event would be duel matches. Amari kind of figured she would have to do that at some point, just straight hand to quirk combat. It would be difficult, but she also knew that she couldn't disgrace herself any further, especially in front of her brother. A voice sounded above the crowd then, present mic speaking louder than ever. Alright, the first round will be between Shinso Hitoshi and Bakugo Amari. Everyone, get to your places. Amari's eyes dropped at her name, now knowing who she was fighting. That purple-haired weirdo was going to regret ever underestimating her. She knew she would have to fight everything. She would have to forget everything about her and Todoroki for now in order to focus on what was actually important, beating him. Moving towards the center, she saw him scan his competition before turning away. Did you finally pull yourself together? It's not too late to run away. Just eyeing him with disgust, she flipped her hair over her shoulder before scoffing. I think that's my line. You really want to be beat by a shorty like me in front of the entire country? But Shinso just found her words funny. Just watch. I'm going to take that hero spot right from under your nose. Amari rolled her eyes in response as they moved to the opposite sides of the ring. President Mike's voice returning. Alright, the rules are simple. All you have to do is either force your opponent out of bounds or cause them to give up. Bakugo overlooked the match from his seat and couldn't help but smirk at President Mike's words. Amari, giving up? Yeah, right. Like that would ever happen. Shinso would have his work cut out for him if that was the case. Glancing at the timer, Amari took out 3 pills from her back pocket before popping them in her mouth, much to Shinsho's surprise. Why was she taking pills? Were they some kind of quirk enhancer? Oh, so you're already cheating then. But she wasn't bothered in the slightest, just remaining silent and letting out an anxious breath. She could do this. Regardless of what his quirk was, she could beat him. She had to. The buzzer rang loudly, and the two challengers just remained still, trying to figure out what each other's moves would be. Shinso put his hands in his pockets then, trying to egg her on as much as possible. "What, are you too scared to attack, Shorty?" Amari's eyes narrowed, but didn't speak, causing Shinso to frown. He needed to get her to talk in order for him to win. And here I thought this round was going to be difficult. "What are you waiting for, short stuff? Come over here so I can beat you." But once again, she didn't move or speak, just stared at him blankly. He then realized that this was going to be way harder than he thought. Recalling their interactions, Shinso tried to think of something to break her serious shell. She was always so explosive and loud when they were together. There had to be something that would trigger her anger. Just then, his eye caught on bakugos, and Shinso smiled. He had it. That girl was always so interested in her brother. "Don't you know that your precious brother would be ashamed of you right now? Refusing to fight? He would think that's cowardly, right?" Amari's eyes widened at her brother's name, feeling a mix of shame and irritation in her throat. Using that word, ashamed, it made her want to scream. Shinso smirked at her response, knowing that he had already won. "Look at him, watching you be a coward. You want to impress him, don't you?" Balling her hands into fists, Amari bit her lip, willing herself to stay silent. He was doing this on purpose. She knew it, although the words seemed to cut into her, filling her with rage. He didn't know anything about their relationship, and yet, why was he speaking such truth? She hated it. He saw her grit her teeth and lean closer, now giving the final blow. "Honestly, you two aren't even remotely alike. Are you even really a bakugo? 'Cause to me, you just seem like a disappointment." That was it. That was the breaking point for Amari. She couldn't help the intense frustration, anger, and shame that had built up in her throat. How dare he speak the words that she left inside? How dare he voice her biggest insecurities? She didn't want to hear it anymore. She couldn't. Taking a challenging step forward, Amari glared back at the boy before shouting her response. "Shut up! Just shut up!" Suddenly Shinso smirked, and Amari's body grew lifeless and empty, almost like a corpse. Her eyes became distant and cloudy as well, staring into space. The entire crowd gasped at the turning point, and Bakugo found himself grasping onto the railing in front of him in anxiety. What the hell was she doing? She was going to lose at this point. Shinso found it safe to take a step closer then, speaking low and commanding. "Now walk out of bounds for me." Just like on command, Amari felt her body turn around and move towards the edge of the arena. Her mind was clouded, and the only thing she could think was Shinso's smooth and alluring words. She willed for her body to stop or for her voice to ring out, but it was no use. Amari felt like a puppet on strings, allowing her master to control her every move. She hated it. Eyeing the end of the arena, she internally cursed, wondering how she could be so stupid to allow something like this to happen. Was she really going to lose like this? And while Bakugo was watching, she was such a disappointment, just as Shinso said. Another step forward, and Amari thought about all the training she had to lead up to this moment. Katsuki had taken time out of his own schedule to do this for her, and yet she was still going to lose? It wasn't fair to him. She was only a couple feet from the end now, and Amari felt this newfound passion course through her body. No, she wouldn't let something as simple as this defeat her. She just wouldn't. Willing everything within her to move her body, she noticed that her fingertips were brushing against the side of her leg as she walked. That could be it. Then instead of forcing the power in her entire body, Amari only focused it into her fingertips, picturing her gold matter swirling in her hand and activating her quirk. The sensation felt like needles in her body. Amari pushed against the desire to remain still as an unforgettable weight clouded her mind. No, she could do this. Katsuki told her that she was a bakugo, so that meant that his words could be true. She felt the heat rise in her fingertips as they brushed against the side of her legs. Slowly, the numb feeling disappeared, and Amari noticed her nerves waking up and restarting. She could feel the pain now, burning the side of her leg, and sending signals to her brain. Shinso crossed his arms over his chest, watching Amari walk towards the exit, and smirked. That shorty really was all talk. This was a piece of cake. But he snapped out of his mind when a small, sizzling sound entered the space, seeing a small section of her pants beginning to sear off. What the hell was she doing? The heavy weight grew slightly lighter, and Amari tried lifting her arm, feeling the nerves rub against the command and hiss. Her leg wasn't enough. She needed to wake up her entire body. Shinso's eyes widened, still confused by her action, when he saw her arm shakily begin to rise up ever so slightly. How could she even move after all that? He was still using his quirk. Her arm shook intensely, trying to fight against his words when her palm started to glow, activating her quirk, just the middle part of her left hand. He stood in absolute shock, wondering what she was trying to do when the realization hit him. She wouldn't do that, would she? No, that would be insane. Amari's foot stepped down over the edge of the boundary and knew that it was now or never. She couldn't hesitate on this. It was reckless, but she was sure it would work. Willing everything she had within her, Amari's quirk glowed even brighter as Shinso gasped, now slightly afraid of what she was about to do. Wait! Then, without even thinking, Amari willfully slammed her hand into her stomach, causing the power to burn and sizzle against her chest. Her nerves awake at the contact, and the intense pain filled her stomach, allowing her to grit her teeth. Leaning over slightly, she felt herself stop moving for the first time and sighed in relief. The pain had shaken her body out of his mind control, allowing it to think about something else rather than his command. Her idea worked. She turned around to look at Shinso, causing him to take a step back in fear. No one had ever broken out of his quirk before, mostly because no one was as reckless as her. She just willingly burned herself to win this battle. It was insane. How did you do that? You're insane! Although she was shaken out of his thoughts when Amari raced towards him. He was shaken out of his thoughts when Amari raced towards him then, fist outstretched for an attack. Shinso gasped and stepped aside, knowing he wasn't very good with hand-to-hand combat. He blinked for a moment before catching her eyes and gasped. They were like fireballs. This really was the same person he had picked on the last couple of weeks. She seemed completely different now. It was kind of scary. Shinso decided to throw a punch as well, but Amari was too fast, ducking underneath him and kicking his leg from underneath him. Maybe he had height on his side, but she had tricks on hers. He fell to the mat in surprise, and Amari stood over him, a hand now outstretched in his direction. Shinso could now clearly see the blood and burn marks on her stomach and legs, staring at him with absolute intent and passion. You shouldn't have underestimated me. Shinso had just enough time to widen his eyes before Amari created a shield in front of him, pushing the boy back and flying him out of the ring. The buzzer rang and everyone cheered at the signal. They all quickly began gossiping and chatting about the small girl that had pushed herself so far just to win. Winner, Bakugo Amari, passes to the next round. Amari huffed out a shaky breath, taking in the crowds and ignoring the excruciating pain in her stomach. She did it. She proved to everyone finally that she was serious. It was such an amazing feeling. Bakugo let out a breath of his own, this time in anxiety, and sighed. Well, how about that? That brat really did it. Did he feel a little concerned about her burns? He did feel a little concerned about her burns, but knew that Recovery Girl would probably be able to fix her up before the next round, so it wasn't a big deal. Although he paused when Todoroki slammed his fist in the side of the wall, shaking his head in his own anxiety for some reason. She's so stupid. Bakugo wanted to know what that meant, but unfortunately Todoroki was too fast, quickly moving out the door in a single motion. What had gotten him so worked up? Walking backstage, she caught Todoroki leaning against one of the walls, his arms crossed over his chest silently, and Amari thought that this was the perfect time to talk about the fight, still reeling from the excitement of it all. Todoroki, did you see the match? I was pretty cool, right? He opened his eyes at her presence before grabbing her hand and pulling her away, much to Amari's confusion. Wait, where are we going? Narrowing her eyes, the boy spoke plainly. He seemed upset about something. Infirmary. Connecting the pieces, she realized that he must have been worried about her. Because of that, she tried to reassure him as quickly as possible, pulling back her hand. Wait, you don't have to do that. I'm all good, see? Better than ever. Like a little tiny fight is going to bring me down. She put her arms up to prove the point, laughing joyfully at her even words, although Todoroki didn't seem swayed by them. Narrowing his eyes, the boy pointed a finger to her stomach, which immediately caused Amari to hiss at the overwhelming pain, having to lean against the wall for support. Still trying to stay convincing, she righted herself up and smiled. See? All good. She then realized that her acting wasn't going to work inside, lifting her hand up so he could grab it again. Fine, I get it already. Let's go. Seeming content with this, Todoroki grasped onto her again before dragging her to the infirmary. When they got there, they both noticed the absence of Recovery Girl. She must have been treating somewhere else. The sports festival was filled with injured people after all. Looking around quickly, Amari put a hand up to the back of her head and laughed. Well, it looks like she's not here. Oh well, guess it can't be helped. But as she turned around, Amari noticed Todoroki already taking out the med kit and pointing to the seat next to him. Sit. Amari's face fell as she complied, taking her spot next to him. I'm telling you, it isn't really that bad, just a little burn. But once again, Todoroki wasn't convinced, forcing her to lift up her shirt halfway to see her stomach. He didn't understand why she was being so calm about all this. That burn looked really serious. Amari blushed lightly as he grabbed a cotton ball just to him and sighed. Why are you always so reckless? You know that Recovery Girl isn't able to heal you. She cast her eyes away from him as the cold antiseptic touched her skin, bringing her to hiss at the contact. I know, but Shinso's quirk was no joke. I couldn't have won otherwise. It's okay, I can handle it. I've had worse. Her words didn't bring him any comfort, though. That's just it. You always seem to do this to yourself. Amari found his words funny for some reason, laughing lightly. Says the boy that almost pushed me into a bunch of explosives a couple hours ago. Todoroki just shook his head at that, still feeling partly responsible. You don't understand. When will you realize that doing these kinds of things makes me even more worried about you? Her cheeks flushed at that, turning to him in question. Wait, you are worried about me? He nodded his head in response. Of course I am. You always seem to run headfirst into danger. You really are like Bakugo in that respect. Amari couldn't help but smile at that. Being compared to her brother made her strangely happy. Yeah, call it a negative trait of mine. Throwing a cotton ball in the trash, silently he sighed. I suppose this is what I agreed to in the first place. Please just try to be careful from now on, okay? She nodded her head and felt that familiar humming in the back of her chest once more. Now that she realized her feelings, staring at him was definitely not good for her health. Turning on a lighter shade of red, Todoroki seemed to notice and frowned. That wound didn't give you a fever, did it? Mari blinked in surprise before shaking her head. Oh crap, he must have noticed the heat rising in her cheeks. No, it's just kind of warm in here. Frowning, he surveyed the area before replying. I don't feel anything. His words just caused her to laugh while slapping his shoulder playfully. Well, that's because you are like an ice cube half the time, silly. Todoroki seemed to buy that, to which Amari was grateful. I see. I'm going to go watch the other matches. Do you want to come? His offer was sweet, but she couldn't deny the grumbling in her stomach, and stomach was making all of a sudden. I think I'm going to go get something to eat first. I'll be there to watch your match, though. He nodded his head in response, and Amari watched him leave before putting her head in her hands. This wasn't good. Now that she realized she liked him, it was even harder to act natural in front of him. She could do this. She could. All Amari had to do was keep quiet about the whole feeling thing, and then she could still save him from that terrible fate. If Todoroki never knew, then they could just go along like normal, like nothing had ever happened. Yes, that was the safest plan. Sitting on a step outside the arena, Shinso replayed the match in his head and sighed in frustration. Had he really thought he would have won that round? He had really thought he would have won that round, especially against that small little girl. Technically, he would have if she hadn't gone completely insane and burned herself for it. Suddenly, the boy was hit with a small object, smacking across his face and falling into his lap carefully. Looking up, Shinso shouted at the stranger, "What the hell?" The voice answered back, half apologetically, "Oh, sorry. I don't really have the best aim." Recognizing the tone, he frowned when he realized exactly who it was. She must have been here to glow. "What do you want?" Amari stood silent for a moment before plopping down next to him on the steps and pulling up a small plastic package. She then pointed to the one in his lap and spoke. "Take it." Shinso gazed at the snack, relatively confused. Was she being nice to him? Is it poisoned? But she just sighed, shaking her head. Rude, and here I was trying to do you a favor. He wasn't going to take it, but soon felt his stomach grumbling inside, giving up and accepting the food. What the fuck is it? Didn't he just finish showering? Never mind. So, what? Are you here to gloat or something? Looking up at the sky, Amari remembered Todoroki's words on the first day of school. He said the same exact thing. What you said before. I'm not from a rich family or anything like that. I just don't like to be looked down on. Shinso's eyes snapped to hers at her words. So I'm guessing you want an apology then. Thinking for a moment, Amari smirked. No, I don't need anything like that.
Please charge.
I'll prove my worth myself. That's what I've always been doing. He finally acknowledged me as a rival. That's all I really wanted. He honestly didn't know what to make of this girl. From the first glance, she looked like a complete spastic? Never mind. Slightly hot-headed idiot. But maybe there was something more to her. Glancing at the snack, he sighed, now feeling slightly bad. Why are you even here? You won. You beat me. You should go back to those other Class 1A idiots. But Amari just rolled her eyes, locking her gaze with his. Because under that terrible, horrible, rude, prideful, arrogant, aggressive, bossy, grumpy facade, Shinso ticked his brow in annoyance. At that, I get it. But he paused when she carefully turned her lips into a soft smile. It was an expression he had never seen her wear before. I think you're really cool. He blinked in surprise as she continued. I mean, a brainwashing quirk? That's gotta be one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I mean, who would have thought that a rude, purple-haired weirdo like you would have such an amazing quirk? Shinso didn't know what to say to this girl. One minute she was cool and confident, and the next she was fangirling and yelling in excitement because of his lame quirk. Shaking his head, Shinso didn't see the appeal. It's not that great. Don't you think it's better suited for a villain? He already knew what her response would be. Of course it was. That was always what his past friends and classmates used to say. They were always afraid of him in the end. Amari thought for a moment, and Shinso was prepared for her answer when the girl did something unexpected instead. She just slapped him on the shoulder, laughing. What? Are you kidding? Of course not. Just imagine, you could brainwash villains and they would never know what hit them. Now that's badass. Shinso shat. I am having a rough day today. Obviously. Shinso sat in absolute shock at her words. That was the first time anyone had said something like that about his quirk. You really aren't afraid of me. But Amari just scoffed, taking a big bite of her snack. I'm afraid of catching your stupid, but that's about it. All the insult went right over his head, only focusing on the meaning. He suddenly felt bad for looking down on her so much. Listen, I'm sorry about the fight. The things I said, I was just trying to get you to talk. Amari fell silent at that, remembering what he said. Don't worry about it. The things you said were the truth anyways. I'm just too stupid to stay silent about it. Shinso was automatically concerned about that. The things he said were so cruel and terrible. Did she really believe them? Did that mean she thought of herself as a disappointment as well? But before he could ask, Amari jumped out of her seat, stretching her arms in response. Ah, well, it's all over then. Truce? Sticking her hand out for him to shake, Shinso just looked at before scoffing. I don't think so. But as he walked past her, he couldn't help but allow his lips to curve into a small smile. Maybe she wasn't all that bad after all. Amari gasped at rejection, hitting him in the shoulder and shouting, What, you jerk? I brought you food and everything. That is like the ultimate sign of a peace treaty. Chasing after him, Shinso put his hands in his pockets. And you hit me in the face with it. To which she gasped in embarrassment. That's not my fault, okay? It just gravitated to your face. Walking back into the halls, Shinso just smirked. She sure was amusing. Her shouting stopped, though, when Todoroki turned the corner, obviously very much in the zone for his match. Amari took in his determination and couldn't help but stare. He was so cool. Suddenly, Shinso heard a loud thud and turned only to find Amari straight up walked into a wall. She really was an idiot. Did you really just run into a wall? She rubbed her face slightly and laughed. What? No, of course not. I was just, testing to see how stable it was. Yeah, that's it. It looks pretty stable to me. He just sighed in disappointment at this when the boy realized the cause of her stupidity, watching her eyeing Todoroki. A sly smile appeared on his face, then, oh, I see. Widening her eyes, Amari tried to play it off, shaking her head. See what? You see nothing. There's nothing to see. Absolutely nothing at all. But Shinso wasn't fooled. Is that why you're rambling right now? How cute. Short stuff has a crush. At his words, Amari gasped, attempting to cover his mouth and to silence the statement. Shh! Just shut up, okay? Forget everything you just saw right now. The fact she was trying to threaten him right now was definitely amusing. Nice try, but your orders won't work on me. Just go over and tell him already. The very idea brought a heavy blush to her cheeks, shaking her head in anxiety. No. Absolutely not. Never in a million years. He's never going to know, so just shut up already. Shinso frowned at this. Why not? It's not that big of a deal. Although Amari had another idea about the whole thing, whispering harshly in his direction. No, you don't understand. It is a big deal. The biggest deal, okay? He can't know. No one can ever know, so drop it already. Gazing at Todoroki, Shinso probably could have left it alone, but somewhere deep down he wanted to help her somehow. She obviously was too shy to come out and ask the boy out. Looks like he would have to give her a little push. Sighing once, she spoke quietly. Bakugo. At the sound of her last name, Amari turned to him, grimacing at the word. What? Suddenly she felt her body go numb, just like during their battle. Internally cursing. That bastard, he just used his quirk on her again. Staring into her eyes, Shinso pointed towards Todoroki and spoke plainly. The next time you want to confess to him, just do it already. Now forget about this conversation. He blinked after that, and Amari felt her body awake, narrowing her eyes in confusion. What just happened? Wait, did I just zone out? What the hell? But Shinso only shrugged. It's because you were drooling over that boy. Pointing a finger to her lips, Amari gasped, slapping him across the shoulder. Shut up. Just then, the announcement echoed above them again, encouraging everyone to watch the next duel. This time it was going to be against Todoroki and Midoriya. Shaking her head, Amari put a hand up to her temple for an incoming headache and spoke. I have to go. See you, Shintoos. He put a hand up in response and watched her leave, knowing that she would be thanking him later for what he had done. God damn it, Shinso. You might think it was a good thing, but it was not a good thing. God damn it, Shinso. Shintoos. It's a good nickname, you gotta admit, that's pretty fucking hilarious. Season 2, Chapter 8. Amari walked into the sitting area of the arena quietly, halfway thankful that she hadn't missed Todoroki's match. She did promise she would be there for him after all. Internally, she hoped that he would be alright after the interaction with his father backstage. He seemed really shaken up by it, and Amari was uneasy because of the altercation. She could still feel his rigid body against hers, trembling slightly from the anger that the boy kept for the man. God, what's wrong with me? It broke her heart to see him like that, but Amari was also slightly thankful that he was trusting her a bit more. If he really was hurting, then she wanted to know and be there for him, just like he was for her. Catching his hair, Amari watched him enter the arena, the crowd cheering massively around him. He seemed like a fan favorite, but that also could have been because he was Endeavor's son. Deku entered next, looking rather uncertain and small next to the other boy. Meeting Todoroki in the middle of the field, she watched silently as the two spoke words she couldn't hear. Todoroki eyed Deku from across the field, recalling his father's words in the back of his head. It was time to prove his worth by winning and completely rejecting his father, especially without his left side. So you're here. Deku himself seemed quite nervous, yet still determined, balling his hands into fists first. Todoroki? They both got into place, Todoroki spreading his feet apart while Deku raised his arms, his thumb gracing over his pointer finger. It was about to get serious. A thick air of silence echoed against them as Deku spoke, now even more clear and uncertain. Todoroki, I'm sorry, but I couldn't help but overhear your conversation with Amari. This caused the boy's eyes to widen. That supposed it made sense. The two were talking in the middle of a public hallway, although the fact that Deku now knew his greatest insecurity made him falter. Had he also seen him hug Amari? He kind of hoped not. Narrowing his eyes, Todoroki spoke back. Even if you did, it will change nothing. I will still win this match. President Mike's voice rang especially loud, encouraging them to start as Deku let out an attack without hesitation. He knew he would have to get a jump on Todoroki if he wanted to win. Why can't I? Something about the one-word sentences. It's just, I know what it is. I know how to say it. It won't. Why? I'm just having trouble speaking today, obviously. It's a word I say almost every dirty joke I make. Come on. Okay. Hold on. Why? I know how to say it. It's a word I say. Why? Okay, let's try this again. He knew he would have to get the jump on Todoroki if he wanted to win. I can't. What the fuck is wrong with me? We're just gonna skip that word. I'm not even gonna try. Although Todoroki was faster, letting an enormous sheet of ice fly across the arena, stopping the powerful wind from reaching him altogether. As the wind cleared, he could see Midoriya's fingers, black and blue from the sudden burst of power. All he needed to do was last long enough for Deku to run out of fingers, and then he would win. Just as I expected. Before he let the boy think, Todoroki threw another sheet of ice towards the boy, only for Deku to smash. See? I said it there! The fuck? The cold with his power, causing another broken finger. Deku realized that he had only a limited number of attacks he could use before all of his fingers were broken, so the boy tried his best to survey the area. It seemed like Todoroki was attacking instantly, not allowing him to think. Deku knew he had to work around that. Letting off another blast of power, Todoroki saw this as his chance, using his ice to propel him up to his challenger with ease. He then threw another ice spike, which caught onto Deku's leg. Deku hissed at the contact, using his quirk to shatter the ice and blow Todoroki away from the close proximity, slamming him into the wall of icicles before sliding down to the ground. Moving the ice away, Todoroki could see Deku struggling, knowing that this battle would be over soon. What? You're that beat up from just defending and running away? Deku gritted his teeth in frustration, knowing the boy was right. He was falling apart with no plan. That was, until he saw Todoroki's arm. It looked to be trembling. Maybe there was a limit to how much he could use his power? Thinking it was over, the two-toed boy threw a finishing blow of ice in Deku's direction, not expecting him to speak back. Where are you looking? Todoroki had just enough time to widen his eyes in shock as Deku broke his eyes, the wind carrying his opponent back a couple feet from the impact. You're trembling, Todoroki. Everyone's fighting with everything they've got, and you want to win with only have your strength. Even Mari has been fighting as far as she can, so you need to come at me with everything you've got. Amari eyed the match carefully, placing her hands on the railing in front of her, while biting her lip nervously. Something had just shifted in the fight. At her name, Todoroki felt a hard ball of shame rise up in his throat. She was pushing herself for this, yes, but Deku just didn't get it. His reasons and hers were completely different. You don't understand, Midoriya. Don't bring her into this. But Deku wouldn't let him have an inch. He knew that Todoroki cared about Amari, that she would be able to get to him to break out of his isolating shell. He wanted to help him. I understand enough, Todoroki. Are you making a fool of her? Of everyone else in UA? Have you given everything... Who have given everything to be here? His words brought a heavy irritation in his throat. How dare he bring up things he knew nothing about, especially involving Amari. It made him angry. How could... Of course he didn't think she was a fool. What are you planning? Did my damn old man pay you off or something? Racing towards the boy, Deku noticed his movements were slower, taking the chance and using his fist to ram it into Todoroki's stomach, punching him roughly. Todoroki gasped at the impact, knowing he had misstepped before stopping his body with ice and grunting. This boy, he was trying to make him emotional to act reckless. It was working. Amari gripped the railing even tighter at this, Bakugo hearing his sister whisper under her breath, "Come on, Todoroki, you can do it." Her mind was a mess as she watched the two boys exchange words she couldn't understand. They seemed really heated about something. Watching below, she noticed Todoroki's movements getting slower and slower. He must have been overusing his power. Deku was really giving him a run for his money. Suddenly, Deku's voice carried so loud that it couldn't help but reach Amari's ears, now connecting the pieces exactly what they were talking about. Because I want to live up to everyone's expectations. That's why, right now, I think you should stop screwing around and fight me with everything you have. Amari's eyes widening, realizing that Deku was trying to get him to use his left side. They must have been overheard back in the hallway. He was pushing him, and she didn't know how to feel. She could see the poor boy falling apart before her, obviously struggling with the very idea to use the left side he promised never to activate. He seemed to really hate that part of himself. Gritting her teeth, she couldn't bear to see him like this. To see the two boys she cared about so deeply, God fucking damn it, falling apart into tiny little pieces. If only he knew how special he was to her, how wonderful he was, regardless of his left side. She internally cursed his father for putting such ideas in his head, allowing Todoroki to be so weighed down and burdened by his quirk. Maybe then he wouldn't be as psychologically scared. Amari tightened her hold on the bar in front of her even more, allowing them to turn slightly red from anxiety. She then saw Deku narrowing his eyes and shouting out something so loud that it filled the entire arena. "It's your power, isn't it?" She took in his words and suddenly felt the urge to say something to him, to scream it from the rooftops, to tell him just how amazing he was. If only he could know about her feelings for him, then she would have told him right then and there. Oh no. Oh no. Almost as if on instinct, Amari suddenly felt herself rise from her seat, strangely not by her command, and leaned forward and over the railing, her mind now clouded with one desire, and one desire alone. Damn it. She then took a large breath and released her desires onto the crown of the people below, not registering that there were thousands of eyes watching her. "Shoto!" At her words, Todoroki couldn't help but widen his eyes, noticing that Midoriya had stopped as well. Had he just called him by his first name? That the sound made his cheeks flush a bit, flashing back the last time she had said it. Turning to look at her, he stood in utter shock, not sure how to process what was happening. Amari? Gripping the railing even tighter, she let her words run wild, not thinking about what she was saying, only wanting her to express her emotions. "Midoriya is right, you're not your father, you've never been..." Todoroki listened to her words, now froze with what she was actually saying, what had gotten into her. But before he could process them, she spoke again. "You don't have to be ashamed of who you are, because it's not only your right side." Oh, fuck that. I can't. "I fell in love with both parts of you, you idiot." Ah, damn. At her words, the entire audience gasped, unsure what to make from the sudden confession. They weren't sure if this was planned or not, but it certainly was random. Todoroki processed everything she was saying before lighting up bright red in embarrassment. Did she just say that she loved him? No, that was impossible. Why would someone like her even consider him? He didn't know what to think or say or do. The poor boy could only stand there in absolute shock. He had gotten confessions before, but this one was worlds different from the others. Usually he would have just felt awkward, but this time he felt his entire body burning in an intense heat, almost not able to control it. How could she really love both parts of him? Deku stood stunned at the display when a giant and burning flame appeared from the left side of Todoroki's body. The unruly flame spouting out everywhere. He did it. He finally used his left side. At his sister's words, Bakugo rose out of his seat and slapped her on the shoulder aggressively. What the hell was she doing in front of national TV? Hey, what are you doing, brat? What's wrong with you? The push caused Amari to blink, now feeling a raging headache approach. What the hell just happened? Why was she standing now? Narrowing her eyes in confusion, she just turned to Bakugo, who seemed angry for some reason. Huh? Katsuki? What's wrong? Sorry, I kinda zoned out. Katsuki turned his head in concern, now also confused. What the hell are you talking about? You're the one that confessed to that icy hot bastard in the middle of a match. Seriously, what's wrong with you? I told you not to embarrass me. She replayed the words in her head for a moment before freezing, now hearing her own voice echo through the screen next to her, an instant replay now showing from moments before. Mari watched herself speak, and suddenly the moment came rushing back to her. Her mind started to run a million directions as she put a shaky hand to her mouth. No, she couldn't have. She didn't. No. Oh God, what had she just done? On national television also? She promised herself that she would never tell Todoroki her feelings, so why had it all come spilling out like she didn't have a choice? It was over. Everything was over. It was time to move back to America and change her name because living in Japan just wasn't an option anymore. She'd already ruined everything. Finally feeling strength in her legs, Amari felt herself move back before quickly running out the door. Anywhere was better than here. She just wanted to disappear. Leaning against one of the walls, she wondered what on earth made her do that kind of thing, and why couldn't she remember it? Then the realization set in. It was that bastard. Pushing her feelings of panic and embarrassment down, Amari was suddenly filled with the undeniable rage, thinking about one thing and one thing alone. She was going to kill him. Shinso was watching the match on the waiting room TV when he couldn't help but grow shocked at Amari's sudden confession. He knew she would probably do it soon, but in front of the entire sports festival? Now that was bold. He smirked under his breath, knowing he did the right thing when the entire room heard a booming shout, heading towards them at light speed. Some of his classmates seemed bothered by the noise. What the hell? This is gonna be funny. Suddenly the door was kicked open, and everyone saw Amari stomp into the room, now knowing where the yelling was coming from. Shinso! Shinso leaned back in his chair, letting his brow raise at her words. Wow, you finally said my name right. Although Amari wasn't pleased, stomping up to him with absolute intent. Yeah, 'cause it's the last thing you'll ever going to hear. I'm gonna fucking kill you, you asshole. Noticing her intent, one of his classmates stepped up then, put his hands up to stop her anger. Hey, what the hell is your problem? You can't be in here. Amari just stood in front of the man, hearing her voice growl in absolute hatred. You have 5 seconds to get out of my way before I kick you. She started counting internally as the boy only gasped. Who knew this short, cute girl could be so aggressive? What? Come on, just calm down already. Reaching in her mind 5, Amari just frowned at his words before taking her knee and kicking him straight in the balls, watching the boy crumble before her. 5. Groaning on the floor, she just stepped over him, only to lock eyes with Shinso, who was slightly amused. Well, be careful, short stuff. You're starting to act like your brother. But Amari wasn't pleased, just reaching down and grabbing him by the ear before aggressively pushing him out the door. Come on. Sounds better than come here. Shinso flinched, but let her forcefully lead him out of the room, already knowing what this was about. Once they were out of the wondering eyes, Amari let go of his ear and started shouting in his direction. What the hell is your problem with me? I tried to be nice to you. I gave you food. I called it a truce. So why did you still want to ruin my life? Although he didn't understand her tone. I think the word you're looking for is you're welcome. Although I didn't expect you to do it in front of the entire stadium. That was bold. Talk about bold. Her eyes began to twitch at that, willing everything within her not to hit him. Excuse me? I never wanted him to know, you dumbass. You just ruined everything. Seeing her so angry certainly confused him. Sure the method was aggressive, but the result was still the same. I think you're overreacting. I just gave you the push you needed. But Amari didn't seem to find his words encouraging, tightening her fist before throwing her hands up in anxiety. You don't fucking understand. Stop digging your nose into things you don't get. This is more than just telling him. That wasn't the goddamn problem, Shinso. She felt her breathing pick up then, putting hand on either side of her head and muttering to herself, "It's over, everything is over, I can't even see him again, I can't even look at him. All I want to do is save him from being ruined, and now it's over. It's pointless. Oh, God." Shinso's eyes turned to ones of concern then, watching her breathing turn shallow. "Hey, are you okay?" She only shook her head before rambling more. Why did you do that? Why did you have to ruin everything? I didn't want to give him hope. I didn't want to do something like that." Suddenly, all of the devastation and aggression she was pushing down came leaking out, feeling burning tears prick at her eyes. Shinso honestly didn't know how to respond to her breakdown. Putting a hand out to her, his voice lowered. "Bakugo, come on. It's not that big of a deal. Now he knows you two can get together, right?" But she only shook her head, denying his words. "It's not that simple. I'm not someone that can have something like that, even if I wanted to. I was satisfied just standing next to him, and now look what you've done. I can't even have that." He didn't know much about the girl, but Shinso found her words odd. She was always this mopey and gloomy all the time. Was she always this mopey and gloomy all the time? Why was she denying her feelings when she clearly liked him? The next step would usually be to confess, right? He honestly could care less about her love life. He just wanted to help her somehow. Why was it such a big deal? Putting his hands to his hips, Shinso replied, "Come on, now you're really overreacting. Why are you acting like this is so bad?" Looking down at her feet for a moment, Amari said her next words without thinking, locking eyes with the boy and speaking seriously. "Because maybe I don't want him to get attached to me and then have to watch him fall apart when I leave." Her words seemed strange to him, watching her face lined with unspoken tears. It felt like there was a weight to those words. "What do you mean? Are you moving or something?" Letting her mouth curve into a sad smirk, Amari answered back, "Or something, yeah." She then turned her back to him, muttering softly behind her, "I have to go." Although Shinso instinctively felt his hand grasp around her arm in desperation. He didn't know why, but he felt a dark and heavy aura around them. Her actions didn't seem like she was moving away. It seemed much more serious. "Wait, you can't say something like that and walk away." Amari froze at his tone, staring at the ground for a couple moments before turning back and locking her gaze with him. She honestly didn't care anymore, who knew? "My body isn't strong enough to handle my quirks, so one day it will eventually kill me. Is that what you wanted to hear, Shinso?" He stood in absolute shock at her words, unable to process them. All he could do was watch his hand fall from her arm slowly. She took in his reaction and sighed, brushing a piece of her hair from her face, and Shinso now saw a scar on her neck as clear as day. "So, do you still want to call me not serious?" Knowing she wouldn't get a response, Amari then turned and left him alone. Shinso, trying to put the pieces together one by one, he suddenly felt horrible for picking on her the last couple of weeks. She was right. He really didn't understand anything. Amari shook her head in anxiety, walking down the hallway when she stopped dead in her tracks, finding Todoroki only a couple feet away from her. He wasn't paying attention, so she took the chance and turned around sharply, already heading the other direction immediately. She didn't know how to face him right now, so it was better to run away at the moment. Breathing a sigh of relief, Amari relaxed only to hear his voice call out to her. Crap, he must have seen her anyways. "Amari." She closed her eyes in fear and picked up her pace, hoping that he would get the hint and just leave her alone. She just couldn't do this right now. Although her hope was short-lived as he called out to her again. "Let's get down." "Amari, wait, hold on." But she certainly didn't want wait or hold on. Instead, she raced even faster down the hallways. This wouldn't do. He would eventually catch up to her. Seeing a door in the distance, Amari threw all respect for herself out the window and climbed inside before locking it behind her. Todoroki slowed his pace, seeing her run to the closet inside, moving up to the door. "Amari, what are you doing?" It was silent for a moment before she answered back, half joking, "I live here now." He frowned at that, noticing the sign above him in the janitor's closet. The silence returned until she called back, "Yes?" Todoroki sighed at her antics, recalling her words during the match. God damn it. About earlier. But Amari just cut him off. She really didn't want to talk about this right now. Right. Can you do me a favor and forget everything you heard?" He could obviously tell she was uncomfortable, and maybe it would have been easier to follow her crest. But Todoroki didn't want to do that. "And what if I say no?" Her eyes widened at this, feeling the heat build up in her cheeks. "Then I'm never leaving this closet." Remaining silent, Todoroki put his hand up to the door, touching it lightly. "Amari, please don't run away from me. I want to talk." He didn't get a reply, so instead he decided to talk to her through the door. It wasn't ideal, but it would have to do. "Did you really mean what you said about loving both parts of me?" She was so ready to turn him down, to lie to him, but actually hearing him talk felt completely different. She couldn't lie to him after that. Of course I do. You don't have to be ashamed of your fireside. I think every part of you is amazing, Todoroki. Todoroki felt his cheeks flush at words, wanting more than ever to see her, to meet her eyes and talk. Then why are you hiding from me? Letting her eyes fall, Amari spoke. Because I never wanted you to know about that. You weren't supposed to in the first place. He seemed confused by that. Did she think that he would be disgusted by her feelings? He didn't like thinking about that possibility. What if I told you that I was really happy when you said that? Amari's breath stopped then, finding herself leaning into the doorframe to hear more. What did you just say? Letting his head fall onto the door, Todoroki replied, No one has ever told me they loved me before. Not my father or anyone. So when you said it, I was really happy. Amari put her hand on the wooden surface, letting her eyes fall. Did he really feel that way about her? Really? Todoroki nodded, but it was unseen from behind the door, his voice lowering. I've never done this before, so I don't really know what I should be doing. His clueless nature was cute to her, although he could never know that. As much as she wanted to open the door in that moment, she knew she couldn't. Todoroki, we can't do this. You're not thinking straight. He blinked in surprise at that. She had already confessed. Why was she pushing him away right now? What do you mean? Her eyes sidened then, already feeling tears prick at the corners. I'm not going to live forever. You know that. The reality crashed down on him, remembering her limited time, although he didn't really see her point. What does that have to do with it? But Amari's voice just cracked in response, the tone rising slightly. It has to do with everything. You don't understand. I don't want to get together just to watch you destroy yourself when I die. I will not be your downfall. I can't be. He heard her crying through the door and suddenly felt the need to comfort her. Was this why she didn't want him to know about her feelings? She was tearing herself apart because of this. Placing his hand on the wooden door again, Todoroki replied, That won't happen. But Amari wasn't convinced, shaking her head in shame. Yes, it will. Somewhere deep down, you and I both know that. It's just the facts, Todoroki. I'm going to die, and if we get closer, it's going to tear you apart. God, it's gonna make me cry again. He wanted to deny it, but just remembering the USJ incident brought a heavy lump to his chest. He didn't really know if he'd be okay after she died. Maybe her predictions were right. Her voice lowered then, hitting her head on the door. If only I was normal. Todoroki picked on her words, letting a small smile come to his lips. If you were normal, I wouldn't be saying these things. I like you because you are you, Amari, and even if what you say is true, that's not going to stop me from feeling this way. Her eyes fell in devastation at that, ignoring the heavy lump in her chest. Then I've already ruined you. We should stop seeing each other, then. Taking a step away from the door, Todoroki froze. Was she really planning on running away from this just because of something that would happen in the future? No, he wouldn't let her. Narrowing his eyes, he answered back, Would you really be okay with that? Are you really not going to get closer to anyone then, Amari? What about Bakugo? Are you trying to run away from him also? At Katsuki's name, her eyes widened. Of course not. This gave him an opening he needed, speaking into the doorframe firmly. What is the difference? Amari, you can't spend your entire life afraid of the future. She remained silent at that, causing him to continue. Forget about the pills, forget about your quirk. What do you want to do right now? He waited for her answer, but instead only received silence. That was until she opened the door, stepping out to meet him. Now he could clearly see the tear stains on her cheeks and red puffy eyes. Amari? She silently walked up to him, reaching her hand up to lightly press a couple fingertips onto his cheek. Feeling the warmth under her hand, she replied, Why did I have to fall for you? I told myself I wouldn't. And look what that did. Letting her eyes crumble, Todoroki followed her movements and placed a light hand to her cheek, before dipping his head down and pressing his lips onto hers. Amari felt the contact but didn't pull away, instead running her fingers through his hair, feeling the same sensation as she did in her dream a couple weeks ago. Melting into him, Todoroki put his arms around her waist, almost instinctively, drawing her closer to his body that was burning up from her touch. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Amari didn't care that her life was ending soon, or that she probably shouldn't have been doing this. All she cared about was his touch and warmth, feeding into her and making her feel safe and loved. He turned his body then, Amari feeling her back hit the wall behind her in her own delicious? I'm gonna say it like it's written, but something tells me that's not the right word. In her own delicious state. That dream seemed closer and closer to reality now. Suddenly, a loud voice broke them out of their trance, shouting loudly in their direction. What the fuck? Breaking apart, Amari blinked a couple times, once to have her eyes focus on someone she really wish hadn't seen the moment they just had. It was her brother. Katsuki. Bakugo immediately turned away, feeling the bile rise in his throat. Oh my god, seriously? I think I'm gonna be fucking sick. That's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Feeling her cheeks blush with embarrassment, she couldn't even look at Todoroki now. We were just... But he just put his hand up, stopping her from finishing that sentence. Then he took one look at the guy who was kissing his sister and glared. Oh no, this was not happening. You know what? I don't want to know. We will talk about this later. Amari cast her eyes away at that. Katsuki, it's really not... Yet once again, Bakugo didn't want to hear it. I said later. Now hurry up. The next round is starting soon. She nodded her head slowly before turning to Todoroki and coughing. So, I'll see you later? He nodded his head and watched her leave before being seen. Someone stepped in front of him, an aura of absolute rage now coming off of him. Bakugo was about to have some words with this boy. Okay. That was a good chapter. It was dramatic. Check her out. She's a good writer. Link will be in the description like usual. And you will hear me in the next video. Bye-bye.